Well, welcome to Beyond Belief. We've got a very special guest for you today, Captain Randy Cramer, an officer who has been given the authority to address all of us on behalf of the command staff of the United States Marine Corps. He was very knowledgeable, and I'm going to emphasize this, of President Eisenhower's 1933 work as a covert military intelligence branch with specific authority over extraterrestrial visitations. How in the world did you stumble into that?
On purpose, as it were. It wasn't really my choice so much as it was me being engineered genetically from the ground up actually into the program since the time before I was born, really. So I didn't really pick and choose it.
They picked it for you.
They decided they wanted to genetically engineer a bunch of people, and I was in the program. Or my parents got selected to have their genetic material put into the program, and I got made out of that. So, yay for me.
Why are you going public with this, Randy?
My brigadier asked me a number of years ago if I wanted to discuss my story and covert military space program affairs to the general public, which I was not necessarily eager to do at the time, but with some convincing decided that, okay, sure, you want someone to be the PR guy, I guess I'll do that then.
So this shroud of secrecy that we've heard so much about, they basically said for you, we're taking off the gloves, go ahead.
It was determined that the need for truth was more important than the need for secrecy. So while we are still unable to get, well, let's just say we're working towards the official channels allowing to have some open discussions about disclosure. But in lieu of that, before we get there, it was important to have some personnel discuss what's been going on just outside of that with sanction from my superior. So not a whistleblower. I've been asked by my superiors to discuss openly. But we're still in the realm of what we call plausible deniability. So you can go ahead and ask questions to the Air Force and the Marine Corps and NASA, and they're still in official denial. But we decided it was more important to start disseminating the information somehow so that people could get a little more warmed up to what's been going on.
At what level did this authority come from?
From the command staff of United States Marine Corps Special Section. So that's a senior department of, a table full of generals.
And tell us, since your youth, how this program evolved for you. How did you get into it, and what did they plan to do with you?
I was created under a soldier augmentation project, so I was genetically engineered to be a combat operative, so that I would be trained throughout my childhood, my adolescence, and then was sent on to a deployment when I was 17 years old for several decades.
Did you have a normal childhood?
Pretty normal. So
Did you play baseball and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I went normal family, normal school. They conduct the training operations covertly, sometimes at night when everyone else is asleep. Sometimes there's some implants involved so that some remote information can be disseminated to the subjects when they're young, when they're asleep in their beds.
We have a secret space force now.
Yes.
That has been formed. What do you think its purpose is?
Well, its purpose, I think, in general, is to allow there to be a discussion about why we need to have the militarization of space, that it's an arena in which other countries are starting to usher and take some territory into. The Chinese have made it very clear that they want to have a facility on the moon in a pretty short amount of time. India has launched a lander not too long ago. Right. So other countries are getting involved in the
quickly, too.
Yeah, and this isn't sort of the overt known military and civilian space program. So as those people encroach and get closer and closer, we need to exercise a little bit more military muscle power and say, well, we want to make sure we're letting people know we're involved in satellite maintenance and protection and cybersecurity and whatever the next generation or threshold of being involved in the militarization of space is. So it's a very beginning introduction of a conversation, which is the case with every military department, you have what is discussed publicly, and then you have what underneath that is covert and not discussed publicly.
I think it's a great idea to have a Space Force.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, for the defense of the country alone, it's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's good to have people who specialize in the arena of space and the things that we have to deal with there. You don't necessarily want to give that to other departments whose job is to primarily be on the land or the sea or just in the air. You kind of want to make it a special arena for specialists who are specifically trained and experienced in that area, for sure. I think so.
The announcement of the Space Force came under President Trump. Who do you think, or what kind of presentation was delivered to him for him to make this announcement of a Space Force?
That's a good question. I don't know that I could answer too specifically to that other than to say that I'm sure that there are some admirals and some generals who have been presenting this information to him and to others for years.
I think so too.
And I mean, this isn't something that happened 6 months ago or even 3 years ago that someone would have just come up with this idea. This is something that's been percolating for, well over, a decade or two.
This has been on the planning stages.
Yeah, for sure. It's not something you just snap your fingers and go, we're going to make a new branch of the military. It's something that had to be some discussion and thought about for a long time.
Do you think he was the only president who bit with it and said, okay, I'm going to do this?
I don't think he would be the only one. I think he was the one that ended up in the chair at the time. I think whoever would have been in the chair at the time would have been the person who would have been encouraged to do it.
The privately owned SpaceX has recently launched 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. What does that mean to all of us? Let's take a look.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Reports say all systems are go.
That's exciting, Randy.
Very. I think it's significant that we're seeing private space industry getting further and further along.
You like that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Elon Musk is doing a great job, and I think he's made quite a bit of substantial progress in the world of commercial and private spaceflight. That's important for us to make it more economically efficient and feasible so that it can be something that we can continue to apply broader spectrum so that we can get industry into space.
Do you think NASA should have continued, though, our manned space program with our own rocketry system?
I think so, actually. I don't think it's something that should have been cut. I think it's something that should have been given extra funding, to be honest with you. There are certain things that certain departments and operations who've been at it for decades, why in the world would you want to cut them off and tell them to stop doing their job when it's something that they've been doing very well for decades,
right,
and then just hand it off to some other people? So I think that was an unfortunate step, but other people are coming in, and we're going to make it work out one way or the other.
And we had to rely on the Russians to get anybody up into space.
Yeah, we had to get a Soyuz if we wanted to get up to the International Space Station. Now we have some options.
Well, that's true. But as you say, it's kind of unfortunate as a nation, as a organized nation, we stopped and we are relying on privatization, because what happens one day if those private companies, decide we're not going to do this, or we want more money, or something like that?
Luckily, I think Elon Musk is a very driven person and has made it very clear that he doesn't care how much money of his own cash that he spends on space development, that he will drop as many billions of dollars that he has lying around because he believes in it that strongly. So I think in that case, it's good to have someone who's dedicated to someone, has the billions of dollars to spend, and doesn't seem to have any reluctance at spending as much as possible to make it happen.
But he's obviously doing it for a return, don't you think?
He's a businessman, so I think he'd be,
I don't think he's wasting his money.
No, I don't think so either, but I think he's incredibly driven. I think that it's, listening to him talk, it's one of the things from his own childhood that he wanted to see. He wanted to see our own society and civilization get into space, and then found himself in an opportunity where he had the billions of dollars that he could, start his own private rocket company if he wanted to. So I think he's a smart businessman, and he's certainly hoping for financial return, but I think he's incredibly driven for us getting out into space. And if he spends, his entire fortune to help make that happen, I think he'd be okay with that.
Interesting.